Well, good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Imani here, and I'm so excited about our show tonight. I always am. Thank you for joining us from wherever you're joining us from, or if you're listening to this broadcast afterwards, you will still get an earful and hopefully learn some important things. I'm going to hand it over to my co-host. How are you doing?
All right, thank you, Imani. I'm doing well. I'm Bernard Kynes, and as Imani has just indicated, we are just so excited and delighted that you have joined us tonight. We do have a wonderful show for you on the topic of fatherhood and Black fatherhood in particular. We have a very, very wonderful guest to share on the topic who's an expert in the matter, a wonderful father himself. I know him personally, and so we look forward to the opportunity for your sharing with us tonight. And by the way, uh, feel free to send in any questions, thoughts, or responses that you may have during our broadcast. As is part of our ritual, if you were, we like to begin our podcast with a spiritual opening that I often lead, and then Imani will follow the spiritual opening with a positive affirmation. And so tonight, I just want to sound the gong bowl. I'm in my office tonight, so for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, I either use what I refer to as the ting shawls, or what are the ting shawls. They sound like bells. But tonight, what you will hear is this bowl. And what I invite you to do is, if you're sitting, is to find a nice posture that you can sit upright for a moment. I want to invite you to close your eyes, and I'm going to strike the bowl 3 times. And I like to invite you to in and breathe out through your nose 3 times and begin just to relax so that your heart can speak to you as you listen to the show. Breathe out through longer exhalation, and then begin to allow yourself to relax and join us as we invite the ancestors to be a part of our journey. We pay homage to our ancestors for the blood, sweat, and tears that affords us to be here tonight. We give thanks for the opportunity to represent who they were and who they are in our lives. Because they were, we are. Because we are, they indeed were. We welcome the cloud of witnesses to be with us now as we learn and discover what it means to be fathers, especially in times like these. So it is for the ancestors that we come. Ashe. Nam. Amen. Thank you. Imani?
Thank you, Bernard. We were both unmuting myself at the same time. It's always a nice way to start this program, and I love, the recognition and the honor that you give the ancestors. I took a short nap this afternoon, and during that nap, my brother visited with me.
Wow.
And it was just so beautiful, and he was the oldest of five, only boy in the family, and he was the big brother, the quintessential big brother who took care of everyone. So I said, okay, maybe he was just checking up on me and mom, wanted to make sure we were okay. So I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
beautiful and wanted to share that. Um, so I
Thank
wanted
you.
to share also a little bit from one of my favorite books. I have a little pocket version of The Four Agreements, if you can see that, by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's such a simple little book, and it basically makes you think about life. It makes you think about everything that happens. The four agreements, and I'm going to do the intro, but the four agreements are: be impeccable with your word. The second one is don't take anything personally. The third is don't make assumptions. And the fourth is always do your best. So in the introduction, it says everything we do in life is based on agreements we have made, agreements with ourselves, with other people, with society, with God. But the most important agreements are the ones we make with ourselves. In these agreements, we tell ourselves who we are, how to behave, what is possible, what is impossible. We say, this is what I am. I can do certain things, and some things I cannot do. One single agreement is not such a problem, but we have many agreements that we make that make us suffer and fail in life. The agreements that come from fear require us to expend a lot of energy, but the agreements that come from love help us to conserve energy and even gain more energy. If we want to live a life of joy, we have to find the courage to break the agreements that limit us and choose new agreements based on love. When we are finally ready to do this, there are four agreements we can make that help us reclaim our personal freedom. Based on the ancient Toltec wisdom, the four agreements offer a simple code of conduct that can transform our lives to a new experience of freedom, happiness, and love. And I'll stop there. Maybe at future shows, I will go into some of the specific agreements. The first is being impeccable with our word. Our word is our bond, and we really have to be careful how we use our words, because words can cut and words can heal. And we just need to be careful and be clear about the words that we use. So, with that, let's get into our show. Brother Kynes, would you like to
Yes,
introduce our guest?
I would love to introduce our guest. Thank you, and thank you for those that positive affirmation, and I really like two of those. I like all four of them, but two of that stood out to me is don't make assumptions and always do your best. And I was hearing folk today uh, making a lot of assumptions about what they thought was in relationships, and assumptions just can get you nowhere fast, but into just more frustration. So that's a beautiful
Mm.
expression. Um, it is my pleasure and privilege to present and introduce a very personal brother, all the way from Vidalia, Georgia. Sweet onions. Well, this brother is from Vidalia, Georgia, but as he's going to tell you, I'm sure he didn't start in Vidalia. We just returned 4 weeks now from Ghana, and had a fabulous time together of getting to know more of who we are, our roots, and um, just a great fellowship with two other of our colleagues, Louis and Anthony. Michael and I go back early 2000 when counseling center, and Michael was interested in the training, not only the training program, as he was preparing to work on his doctorate degree, matriculating at the time, and also on the staff at Care in County, Georgia. And I remember this younger than I am, was coming in. He was all excited, um, and about the program, about himself, and I was so excited to see him, because I was there was not many African Americans, actually maybe two or three of us who were training on that level at this time. And so Michael entered the program, and we have been friends and brothers uh, since that time, and he can add more to that. So Michael Lee Cook, licensed marriage and family therapist whose special interest is in Bowen family systems theory and its extension and applications to individuals, families, and organizations. Of Micah Counseling Services, offering counseling, coaching, and consultation. He is also a clinical fellow and approved supervisor of the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, or AAMFT. Dr. Cook has earned his doctorate in theology, the theology of pastoral care and counseling, has written an array of articles, has conducted many workshops that deal with applying the Bowen Theory to individual relations and our society at large. Michael is the author of Black Fatherhood, Adoption and Theology in 2015. Many more accolades that I can say about this brother. He's energetic, he's insightful. Um, when one of the, this is an aside, but part of the introduction, while we were in Ghana, we went to areas, and out of four of us, Michael was the one that had this entourage of brothers who took his shopping bag and was walking around, and they started referring to him as King Michael, King Michael, and Michael did not back down. He said, "Yes, I am the king. I am the king," and we just had a wonderful time. So, without further ado, welcome to our show, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, uh, across the listening audience, my friend and my brother, Michael Lee Cook. Imani?
Welcome, Michael. So nice to have you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Um, I enjoyed hearing your stories from the motherland and all that occurred while you were there, and I enjoyed our pre-discussion about parenthood, and really excited about hearing your journey as a dad, as well as about your book and the whole picture. So tell us a little bit about your journey. What got you to where you are now in terms of being a therapist, and yeah, just tell us a little bit about your story, and we'll chime in with questions or comments as you speak.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for letting me come on your show and having this conversation. As Bernard said, we go back a long way, and our roots are, even extend beyond the time we met, because we're both from very small towns. I'm from, as he said, a place called Vidalia, Georgia. Most people know it because it's Vidalia sweet onions. We're not Valdosta, because Valdosta is known for football and Vidalia is known for onions. So that's a distinction. I grew up there with my brother and my mother, and that was the sort of extent of my nuclear family. And so part of the work that I have, come to in my own life to figure out how I got to be a family therapist is that I've always had a deep interest in understanding the dynamics of family, of relationships, and how they impact a person's own development, impact a person's development, their personality, sort of what makes some people succeed and maybe some people not succeed so well, having grown up in the same family. So you kind of fast forward all that, and I've been on that sort of journey all my life. I did not grow up with a father, so again, it was just me and my mother, and so I never had a fathering experience. I never had any grandparents to draw from. No grandmother, no grandfather, um, and so it was just us. And so I had, wonderful people in my family, aunts, uncles, and so forth. But one of the things that I've always sort of resisted is the ideal of actually becoming a father. One of the things that I always imagine myself is that I didn't want to be a father, because I felt that if I became a father, then I would have to deal with things that I really didn't want to deal with. I knew that my kids or any potential kids would in fact challenge me to essentially grow up, and maybe I didn't want to do that. And so for many years, I just resisted the whole notion of being a father. But having met my wife, who we've been married for nearly 22 years now, and got into this enterprise of becoming a father with her, and here I am. And so the work that I do in terms of family therapy is really trying to help people to understand the connections between their early life and their functioning in whatever role they may play in the family, mother, father, sister, brother, whatever the case may be. So that's my work, is to help people to learn how to make the connection between what they've experienced in their early lives, and also to make those connections in terms of what that really means for them in their role as, in this case, a father. And so that's what I've been up to, and that's what I'm up to. And the ideal of Bowen family systems theory, the reason why I'm so drawn to Bowen family systems theory is because Bowen family systems theory actually takes a look at the whole system of a person's life and all of its relationships and of the institutions which have impacted that person, and not just the individual as the focus, but it takes in consideration the whole context in which the person lives and grows and develops. And so for me, it just works fabulously well, because in Bowen family systems theory, the demand is that you must look back in your life in order to understand it, so that you might be able to chart a way forward that's most meaningful for you and those folks that you're in relationship with. So that's pretty much how I got to where I am and what I do every day.
Well, Bowen family systems theory sounds similar to Sankofa. You have to look back, from where you've come from in order to move forward in a way that makes sense and in a way that's going to make you stronger as a person. So
Absolutely.
that sounds like a really good system. Brother Kynes, did you want to have a follow-up question?
Yeah, thank you. So, Michael, as I was sharing with you before we came on the air, I found this. I found a paper essay that I wrote back, I think, in 2000, maybe in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to respond to. I'm going to read the what I wrote in the problem um, paragraphs, and you respond to that as relates to issues of Black fatherhood. Now, I entitled this on the spiritual gifts of African American fathers, but I want to lay out kind of the problem first, and with your experience and what you know from Bowen Theory and family systems, just take it from there, and we'll just build our conversation around that. And then the second part we'll come to later is the three parts that I put in the paper, but in the second part after the problem was this notion of provider, but I'll come back to that a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
But let me start with this. And like I said, this is old, so take it for what is worth that it may stimulate our conversation. In our African American communities, unwed mothers head more than 55% of our African American families. Who is providing the nurture that only fathers can give to enhance their children's sense of self worth, self esteem? For those fathers who are spiritually, physically, and emotionally accessible for their children, I wonder who is noticing that they are more than just providers. What about the small percentage of African American fathers who are rearing and nurturing their children as single parents? Who is acknowledging and affirming these brothers? How have we come to a place of stuckness regarding our attitudes concerning African American fathers? Could the problem be that we, the African American family system, have deeply internalized the dominant social system's attitude about African American men into our psyche overall? Do our personal experiences distort our worldview regarding our fathers, past and present? In short, do we really know our fathers' personal stories? Have we paused to consider those intangible gifts that African American fathers share with their children? Finally, just what really is a father? Is a father limited to the definition of a quote man who has begotten a child? Your response.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't think what you wrote is old. I think it's as fresh as it was the day you wrote it. I think those issues are still as prominent today as the day when you wrote them. To the first question, I think on some level, it's like fatherhood in my mind is much like any other character that we have in society. Like we have characters, we have mothers as characters, we have fathers as characters, we have cartoon characters. And essentially what we do is we craft these characters and then we put on these characters the kind of responsibilities that we think that character should have, which essentially overlooks who the person is as an individual. The mere fact that you become a father, you automatically may get sort of put into a position to have to function as a father without really anyone taking in consideration, have you even been prepared for that role? And what are your assets and what are your liabilities in taking up that role. So to simply demand that someone become a provider because they are a father, that might be making an assumption that the person has the skill set and actually the resiliency in order to make that happen. So the first thing I think about is when we think about fatherhood, again, it's much more than a character that's been created. And each person has to figure out how they're going to live out that character. And some people, based upon, the people that they grew up with, the models in which they've been given, they may say that a provider, a father is the primary provider or should be primary provider as this kind of mainstay of the father. The challenge with that is that it literally negates every other part of the person other than being a father as provider.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. And how would you say that this and relates to some of the issues of Black fatherhood, and why this is still today an important subject of choice?
Well, part of I think it has a lot to do with I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, and the way it's connected, is that many people, I would say many fathers who become fathers, just simply have not had enough experience on what it means to be a father. Even if they had a good fathering experience, that doesn't mean that they can literally mimic what they learned from their father or not learn from their father and just apply it, because the world has changed in the times in which they have become fathers. So instead of thinking about, what is an ideal father or what role the father should play and all that, maybe we should think about how do we function together as a system, as a family, as not only just individuals, but how do we function as a family, be it the mother, the children, and not put all of the responsibility on the person, this father, to be one way or another in terms of this character. Why don't we expand it and allow it to be, how do we all take a little bit more responsibility for this role of whatever the father is supposed to be doing or not doing?
Imani, you're muted.
Your last comment made me think about the difference between motherhood and fatherhood. And you kind of hit it on the nail, that whole thing of being the provider, that extra pressure put on males, which is different from the kind of pressure that's put on females as being the primary nurturer, the one who, is supposed to prepare the food and, really nurture the children. But men have that extra responsibility, have traditionally had that extra response. And then just the pressures of being a Black male in this society go so far beyond that. I remember once when I was in school in Harlem. Columbia was in Harlem, but they called it Morningside because it was associated with Harlem. But my dad picked me up from school one time, and the street where the school was really bright. The lights were really bright. And so he took off, and we were like on the West Side Highway, and it wasn't as bright, and he didn't have his lights on, and it was raining. And so we're driving. He had just gotten a new Ford Explorer, I think, back then. And we're riding, and then the siren comes behind him, woo, 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 and the guy comes up to the window, and my dad said, "Officer, what are you stopping me for?" And I'm like, "Ooh." He said, you don't have your lights on? Is that a good enough reason?" And we all laugh, but it's like being stopped by the police as an elderly Black man. It's like I just can't deal with it. And he worked in New York City Housing Authority for many, many years. And he was just at that point, you have no right stopping me because I'm not doing anything wrong. It's like this powder keg, And so the officer was kind of like apologizing to him for stopping him. But, that could have gone in a totally different way. But yeah, so respond to that, the kind of powder keg effect in this society of being a Black man and how that affects fatherhood.
Yeah, I think part of I think one of the ways that it impacts it, and I try to talk to people about this, particularly the fathers that I have to deal with, Black fathers who come into therapy, that most people don't really thoroughly consider that before a Black man actually becomes a Black father, this person was someone's son, someone's nephew, someone's friend, long before that person became a father. And depending upon how that person was reared, and he was probably often reared in a sense of fear. He was always on edge about, hey, be careful. You're a Black man. Be careful. Don't do that. Be careful. Watch out for this. So he's already a nervous wreck just from growing up. And then he gets a child, and then everyone says that you're supposed to be responsible. You're not being a breadwinner. You can get pulled over by the police. You can get shot down. I mean, so he's already under this tremendous amount of anxiety, even from childhood. And so even when he becomes a father, he's not likely to have already sorted out all of the pressures that he's experienced just growing up, being a Black kid in America. And so there's not a lot of room for him to really kind of process that. He just got to get on about the fathering, but then he still got to figure out how to sort out what it was like to be the Negro kid in the 3rd grade who had to always watch himself, or the kid that was picked on because he didn't have a father in his own home. So there's a lot of sort of conditioning that creates a certain amount of anxiety in just being a Black man that he doesn't really ever get a chance to process, and then he's got to rush over and be father.
Yeah, you know, that's a very excellent point. And in terms of having to be Black and male in our society, and then add the responsibility of fatherhood on top of that, and I am there's a 3-part that I wanted to kind of share slightly on a personal note with it. One, you wrote your book on adoption, on Black fatherhood. So I was an adopted child. You know, my grandfather wanted and insisted that my adult mother give me up for adoption because she became pregnant while she was teaching school and out of wedlock, and so he didn't want her to bring shame on the family name, and so sends me to New York sends her to New York, not me, to be with his brother, and so I grew up in Cordell with an adopted dad that I didn't understand. He died when I was 11, and emotionally was not fully available to me to the point that you were making, to how to say it, to be emotionally available. He was physically present when he was there. And you know, I really didn't understand him, Michael, until I saw the movie Miracle at St. Anna by Spike Lee, about the World War II veterans who in the Italian who fought in Italy. And I never understood why he was so angry and why he disliked quite so much until I watched that movie. Well, part of his anger and part of his alcoholism, you know, was projected onto me. You know, I didn't, you know, I drank early, but I quit. But I internalized, you know, some of his methods of fatherhood, not being emotionally available. So on, you know, I was carrying on and relating to them as he related to me. So that was one year. Then the next year, I didn't meet my biological father until I was age 30 for the first time. And I looked just like him, but he did not, he like, well, I don't know who you are. He didn't say that in words, but his response was, well, that was like 30 years ago. But we reconciled before he died. So the point I'm saying is, this is what you're saying is that, and what I'm picking up on what you're saying is, as Black fathers, sons of fathers who had a struggle as Black men in this country on the emotional side in our family systems, we had to struggle with what we internalize as Black men until we hopefully have found ways to transform some of that suffering and pain and trauma that they pass on to us. What do you think?
And I think you are absolutely right. And the challenge becomes, the closer we are to the trauma, like leaving home at 17 or becoming a father at 17 or 16 or 19 or 20 versus becoming a father at 30 or 31 or 35. I think the closer we are to the trauma, I think it makes it that much more difficult to sort out what it really means to be a father. Because the part of the challenge, and what I've seen along the way, is that I've seen where being a father, a Black father, or the folks that I've worked with, in some way, they've tried to get themselves a better childhood through what they do with their children. And I tried to explain that children can never give you a better childhood. You have to work through your own childhood that belongs to you and let the child have their own childhood that belongs to them. But I think the work of having not worked on these stories that we've been given about fathering. I mean, if you think about it, even the whole idea of being a provider. Well, at certain stages along the way, a Black father probably could be a provider by being a farmer or being a merchant of some sort or being a craftsman of some sort. But when the economy shifted into more in an industrial situation where people got paid labor, it was almost as if the power to be man, to be father, be provider, was basically put in the hands of someone else. Now it's a selective process. He can't go out and be a farmer and take care of his family. Now he's got to go make an application and hope that somebody hires him. So to be able to shift to think that from every generation, being a Black man and being a Black father meant something different and continues to mean something different even today. I mean, I think about even in my own situation where I find myself, having gone through all of the educational processes and preparing myself and everything. But the reality of it is that didn't make it a simple process by way of me being a provider for my family, because discrimination was as strong as it was even, say, back in the 1930s. So when we put pressure on a father to be provider, then we have to really think about what the person is bringing into fatherhood and what does the person have to deal as an individual in that role of father.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, those are good points, Michael. Thank you. We're going to take a brief break and look at one of the nutritional supplements. Give you a break, Michael and Bernard. And when we come back, we want to hear specifically about your book and how you use your book in your work. Maybe some of the highlights from your book and how you use it in your work and how people can get a copy of it and all of that. So I'll ask everybody to stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire. Welcome to What You Need and Why. And today I want to have a conversation with you about a product that I use every day called Micro Daily. Yes, it is an inflammation zinger. It knocks out inflammation, boom, 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 like nobody's business. And a strong immune system is chronic to fighting illnesses and diseases and viruses. Oh yes. So what I do every day is I take a pouch of this, and I use it in my smoothie, actually. But my second one of the day, I just use it in a glass of water. And I want you to watch this, because this is going to go from like a lemonade yellow to a nice golden yellow before we're finished with this conversation. Just take a peek. I want to also show you that Dr. Prasad, who created this Micro Daily product, he also created it initially for the military, and he wanted to bring it to the public, and they said no, and he left and started his own company called Engage Global, and this is how I got my hands on it. True story. I had fallen and face down actually in a store and caught myself in full plank. Thank you very much. But I had fallen and caught myself, and the next day I actually felt like I had been steamrolled. True story. And this product had arrived in the mail to me for me to try. So I said, the next morning when I woke up, I said, I better get across the street. My office is next to a hospital, and really check myself out and see if I'm okay, because I felt horrible. So I had a sample of this Micro Daily, and I had a sample of the powdered hydro. So I took 2 of these pouches and I put it in a glass of water with ice, a big tall cup with ice, and I took 4 of these because I'm that girl. I just want to see if it really works. Plus I was in pain and I didn't want to take an over-the-counter drug. So while I was in the waiting room, I drank my cup of this. I took my 4 capsules of this, and by the time they x-rayed every part of my body, I literally was 70% better. So I walked across the street to my office when initially I had hopped from my office to the hospital, and I was just amazed, and I have been sold ever since. And I called my friend Cornelius, who sent me this stuff, and I said, I don't know what that was, but I need some more, and I need it now. And so I have been taking it ever since. Dr. Prasad, who created this, he created it for germ warfare. That's what he said. He created it for germ warfare for such a time as this, right now where we are today. He also has recently created this formula, and this is Micro Daily EMF formula. It's brand new, it's just out, and because, as you know, inflammation of EMF radiation is very real, and it's very harmful to our health, and I am just floored at how we are allowed to be subjected to these dangers. When how many scientists, let me see, I wrote this down because I was so floored. Over 500 studies have been done about the harmful effects of EMFs on our body and on our health. And I'm telling you, that's just not acceptable. So instead of crying about it, protect yourself, because the horse is out of the gate and there is no bringing it back. EMFs is on the loose along with 5G, and any devices that you get moving forward will be 5G. So hang on to your 4G or your 3G devices as long as you can, and protect yourself with the Micro Daily that has all of the micronutrients in it. And this EMF radiation, it helps these cellular defects that contribute to increasing the risk of developing neurological abnormalities. So there's a little extra oomph in this one, and this regular one is just as equally is powerful, but this one has the extra kick to protect us from the EMS. And of course, just like your little jewelry, my little magnetic jewelry on my ears, on my neck, on my wrist, because I'm in front of a screen all the time, and so are many of you, as we are forced to do in this season. But it is okay. Again, protect yourself. Take your Micro Daily. Drink it. Look how beautifully golden this has become. Yes, just since we've been talking, told you. And take your Micro Daily. Look below and I'll tell you how to get it. Join me tomorrow on What You Need and Why. God bless you.
Again. That was the good Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire, who I really admire. And I've been actually taking those products for a couple of weeks now, and I can tell the difference in my system. So I highly recommend you check them out. And that's the link that's being shown in microdaily.com/Dr. Imani. So with that, we're going to get back to, thank you, Toya, for sharing that with us. We're going to get back to our program. Dr. Michael Cook, we want to hear a little bit about your book on fatherhood.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think it goes back to the idea of, again, I never imagined myself being a father, but I have two wonderful kids, and one of my great sort of anticipations is to figure out what I was going to learn about myself by trying to be a father to kids. And one of the things that I have, particularly for the book, it is focused in a very specific context, and that is it's focused in on Black fatherhood in the context of adoption with non-kinship children. Because generally my experience was that in my experience in the African American community, as an example, that adoption of non-kinship children rarely took place, or at least to the point where no one ever talked about it. I heard of, you know, um, maybe a sister had a child, and another sister adopted the child, or the child was kept within the family, but not a child that was actually birthed in a different family and brought into another family. And so the book is all about the experiences of being a father, a Black father, in the context of an adoption with a non-kinship child. And so I wanted to see what that experience was like, because first of all, when I began to get into the adoption process, or even considered it, I was already sort of overwhelmed with all of the mythologies around what it meant to adopt a child. Well, you know, if a child is put up for adoption, then it's probably a bad apple, or all kind of crazy stories like that. But the reality of it is that I didn't have any information available to me to really be able to kind of get a sense of what it meant for a Black man to adopt a non-kinship child, and not adopt a child in which maybe he has married someone with children and decided to adopt those children and make that family you know, whole. But where it is a distinct child birthed by someone else, brought into a completely different family. I'd never seen that before. I never heard of it before. In fact, when I was even inquiring with some folks about the whole ideal of adoption, and the first thing they said, no way, I would never do that. Because if a person doesn't want their own child, why would I ever want somebody else's child? So I felt that there was something much to be learned about it. And so I made this the source of my dissertation, and interviewed Black men who had adopted non-kinship children and followed their stories and everything. And so it's about trying to figure out how to be father to a non-kinship child. And I have also another child, a daughter, who is my biological daughter that my wife birthed. But what I've learned along the way is that the same level of commitment and the same level of responsibility goes along with a child who's adopted or not adopted. It's the same responsibility. So the book tries to uplift, because it's a very secretive thing. There are very few people that will talk about their adoption, or at least their adoption of children, outside of a very specific type of conversation. It's a very secretive process. And what I found is that many men who adopt children, Black men who adopt children, they literally suffer in silence, because there's not really a lot of space for them to talk about it. Because the first thing that generally happens, a person may ask, why did you have to adopt a child in the first place? Are you in some ways, are you shooting blanks, or is your wife infertile? I mean, what creates the need to do this? And so my goal was to clear all that up, and really provide support for these Black men as they have to try to negotiate the reality. Like in this case, my son, he was adopted, and we adopted him when he was 12 days old. And what I've learned over time is that it would be impossible for me to have my son if his biological father did not forfeit his responsibility of taking care of the child. So there's some dynamics there. A black father released a child so a black father might father a child. And so we've had to sort of try to manage that. But that's what we have.
I'm sorry. Such an important topic, Michael. I'm glad that you shared that. I have known a number of families that have adopted over the years, and I know of both scenarios where, you know, family has taken in children who were part of the family. My parents has 20 children that, you know, biological as well as non-biological children. And I mean, I think it's such a blessing for the children and for the parents and for the families, you know, to do. There's so many African American children that need homes and that need good family structures. So there should be no stigma, as you were mentioning, about adopting a child. I mean, there definitely should not be a stigma. It's such a beautiful thing, and we need to do that. There are so many families in this country, non-African American families that you know want children, and they go to China and other countries to get children, and we have so many children here that need good homes and need good families. So hats off to you, you know, for adopting as well as for looking into that topic and making it okay, you know, for Black people to become fathers of children that they did not birth, provide. They weren't biological children. So.
Yeah. One of the things I will say too is one of the things I would say is that when it comes to adoption, oftentimes the least likely child to get adopted is a black male. That the reality of it is that folks will generally adopt girls, you know, but the least likely adopted child is a black male. People have a tendency not to want to adopt black males. And that might speak to this whole idea of the stigma or the sort of impact of what a black male is encountering, like we were talking about, trying to understand the struggles of what that means. I mean, it's not very known again that black males are the least likely to be adopted.
Michael, before we're approaching the end of our show, I want to shift just briefly. And how did our trip to Ghana and what part of our experience there shifted you and your ideas of fatherhood based on what you witnessed and experienced in your life, what you saw? As you were talking about fatherhood, I was thinking about the little boy. You know, we were riding back to Accra, and the little boy was on the side of the street, and he jumped up in frustration. And there's a girl who came on the other side. What, if anything, did the experience shift in you and your ideas about fatherhood, be adoption or just fatherhood in general?
You know, one of the things I have said, and I continue to repeat, is that one of the most amazing things that happened to me when I went to Africa, West Africa, is that it literally changed me forever. I'm just never going to be the same person. I'm never going to see any part of my life in the same way. I'm an absolute different person. And what I mean by that is I was trying to figure, how is it possible that Africa is the second most populated continent in the world, right? In the world. It's the second most populated continent in the world, right? Yet, for all these years of my life, I never really focused in on Africa in all of its beauty. I heard parts in here and there. And what I realized is the reason why I focused in, or the lack thereof, was the fact that I live in a country where we actually believe in Santa Claus, that we devote a whole season year after year on Santa Claus. And everybody knows that it's a lie. but everybody can lose with it. And so it's the same way with talking about Africa. There's been so many Santa Claus stories created about Africa that it literally removed my attention away from this great source of inspiration that I could use to think about what it means to be family, what it means to be father. It's all this richness that's there. I was recently reading an article on what family life was like pre-colonial times, and the idea is that the elders, they were the sort of therapists. They were the folks who actually helped to order and manage the family. It wasn't an individual enterprise; it was a communal enterprise. And then when the missionaries came in, they began to try to give people a different kind of understanding of what it meant to be father, where you have to be this provider, that you're the only one that needs to do the job. And so for me, the ideal is to go back to the communal, that we're all in this together. I'm not just father to raise children. We're all in this together as community to help raise each other, and that we have to tap into the resources of the elders, tap into the resources of the community to be able to do this together. Because ultimately what has happened in my mind is that we have literally put too much pressure on each individual in this enterprise of fatherhood until we have diluted our collective power. So if anything, Africa showed me that we have a tremendous amount of resources, a tremendous amount of power that we have to tap into if we ever hope to raise kids and raise families that are going to be able to withstand the demands of life every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Very powerful. Well, that brings us to our show. We have a few moments left, and I just want to say, my friend, thank you very, very much for joining us in part of our show tonight and in all of our hearts with vision, your testimony, your experience, your love of being a father, to purchase your book, and those who want to reach out for you individually, information is available. And I just want to let you know that as your big brother, how proud I am for you, man. You know, and I love you most much. Thank you so much, and we'd like to sometime in the future if you're open to coming.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Absolutely. I mean, you know,
I'm just messing with you.
I would never miss an opportunity to talk with you and Imani and talk about things that are important. And I think fatherhood is extremely important.
Yeah, well, you can't, so what. I say you can't say no to your big brother. So
that's right.
No, you can't. Thank you so much, Michael. I echo everything that Bernard said in terms of our gratitude for you being here with us this evening. We appreciate it. Keep up the good work. What you do is so very much important. Appreciate you.
I like what Janet Bernard said about the appointment, about being a very powerful communal vision for the family, and I echo that the communal element is what we have to be about. And when we grew up, even particularly like in South Georgia, in some ways you had that, where the community came together. So anyway, I saw his comment, and I just wanted to add that in terms of as part of our closure. Thank you, Jenna Bernard, for that expression.
Absolutely. And Kevin Vaughn was asking, he wants to have you on his show. So perhaps we can give you contact information one more time before we sign off. I'll check and see if our producers can pop that back up. Yay! Thank you, thank you. They are on the case. Thank you,
So there you
Toya.
go, Kevin. So just get that information, and Michael will surely respond.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being a part tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Everyone, take care. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Progressively Yours Health and Wellness Podcast. Have a wonderful evening.